They heard it would be the aircraft that would finally bring frontline American technology within their reach. It's 1983, and a group of South Korean defense procurement officials excitedly enters a meeting room to get a glimpse of the Northrop F-20 Tigershark, the United States' latest jet fighter. Their eyes widen. On the screen, the soaring aluminum hero comes bursting through the clouds at Mach 2. They listen intently as the film's narrator lays out the fighter's impressive features and capabilities. Excellent thrust-to-weight ratio, high maneuverability, solid reliability and ease of maintenance, as fast as an F-16 at half the cost. Exactly what they've been looking for. Just as it couldn't get any better, legendary American war hero and sound barrier breaking test pilot Chuck Yeager. His ringing endorsement is all they need to hear. The Tigershark is all set to revolutionize the air forces of the USA's allies across the globe. Yet when they need it most, it's nowhere to be found. The Freedom Fighter. The story of the Northrop F-20 begins with its legendary predecessor, the F-5. The F-5 had been born in the early 1960s as the United States' answer to a simple question. What do you give your allies when they need a capable fighter but can't afford or aren't trusted with your very best? President Kennedy's administration had launched a search for an inexpensive fighter that could be shared through the Mutual Defense Assistance Act. The winner was Northrop's N156F, redesignated as the F-5 Freedom Fighter. F-5s were lightweight, twin-engine fighters that were, in the words of aviation writer Ayad Yone, quote, elegant, zippy beauties with body lines so trim they look like canoes with wings. They were simple to maintain, cheap to operate, and lethal in the right hands. Chuck Yeager, a World War II super ace who became the first man to break the sound barrier, said, quote, of all the airplanes in the world that I've flown, the F-5 is the most fun to fly. For Yeager, a pilot who'd flown everything from experimental rocket planes to the latest supersonic fighters, to single out the F-5 said something profound about this unassuming little fighter. The F-5E Tiger II that followed was even better, equipped with radar and capable of firing the AIM-9 Sidewinder missile from wingtip rails. By the late 1970s, nearly 2,250 F-5s of various models had rolled off Northrop's production lines. They serve with air forces around the world, from South Korea to Switzerland, from Iran to Ethiopia. The aircraft had even found an unlikely role as the enemy in Top Gun training, where F-5E Tiger IIs, painted in Soviet colors, served as stand-ins for Russian MiGs. However, one country's air force soon realized that it would need something more advanced. Opportunity knocks. Since China's Communist Revolution of 1949, Taiwan had been living in constant threat from its much larger neighbor, whose aerial warfare capabilities were modernizing rapidly. The Taiwanese desperately needed a new aircraft capable of engaging China's latest fighters at beyond visual range, something that required the AIM-7 Sparrow missile. Taiwan was already producing F-5Es under license, so the solution seemed straightforward: upgrade the Tiger II with Sparrow capability. The Department of Defense asked Northrop to research the possibility of adding an AIM-7 capable radar to the F-5. Northrop began studies for this new variant, which they tentatively called F-5G. But geopolitics intervened. President Richard Nixon's famous 1972 visit to China had begun a delicate process of rapprochement with the People's Republic of China. The State Department was walking a diplomatic tightrope, and China made it clear they considered U.S. arms sales to Taiwan against their interests. Even this modest F-5 upgrade was deemed too provocative. President Jimmy Carter, keen to promote the United States as a force for peace rather than war, personally blocked the F-5G sale to Taiwan, leaving Northrop with an advanced fighter design, with no primary customer. The Taiwan situation revealed a broader problem with U.S. export policy. American allies faced increasingly sophisticated Soviet aircraft, but growing restrictions on advanced U.S. technology exports were forcing them to look elsewhere, notably to France's Dassault Mirage 2000. The U.S. was losing both influence and lucrative defense contracts. In January 1980, Carter authorized a solution: the FX Fighter Export Program. It was essentially a more formalized, systemic approach to what the U.S. had been doing since the early 1960s, developing fighters specifically for export which would be capable enough to handle Soviet threats, but deliberately excluding the most sensitive American technologies. Two companies responded to the FX challenge. General Dynamics offered the F-1679, a deliberately downgraded F-16 with an older engine and simplified avionics. Northrop saw the perfect opportunity to resurrect and refine their F-5G design. A significant upgrade. With the FX program offering a potential market and the F-5G concept approved, Northrop's engineering team faced their greatest challenge yet. They needed to create a fighter that could handle 1980s threats while remaining cost-effective enough for export customers. The F-5E Tiger II could use twin General Electric J-85 turbojet engines. Reliable, proven, but ultimately limited in power. Now, for their next-generation fighter, Northrop would rip out both engines and replace them with one massive power plant, the General Electric F-404 turbofan, originally designed for the Navy's new FA-18 Hornet. The engine swap promised to deliver 60% more thrust than the F-5E's twin engines combined, while adding only 17% more weight to the airframe. The improved thrust-to-weight ratio was designed to push past Mach 2, while retaining the F-5's legendary agility and reliability. More importantly, a single-engine configuration would reduce maintenance complexity and operating costs, crucial advantages for budget-conscious export customers. The airframe itself required careful evolution. Northrop retained the F-5's proven wing design, but added refined leading-edge extensions to improve lift and maneuverability at high angles of attack. The horizontal stabilizer was enlarged by 30% to enhance control authority, while a new fly-by-wire flight control system was designed to allow unlimited angle of attack capability, something that would give the new fighter decisive advantages over contemporary designs like the F-16, which was limited to 26 degrees by its flight computers. The new fighter would also need to match the electronic sophistication of potential threats. While the F-5E had relied on basic analog instruments and simple radar with limited range, the F-20 called for a complete avionics revolution, centered around the General Electric AN/APG-67 multi-mode radar. This advanced system was intended to track targets approaching 50 miles in look-up mode and over 30 miles look-down, giving the aircraft beyond visual range combat capability for the first time in the F-5 family. The cockpit transformation was equally dramatic. Gone were the F-5's traditional analog gauges, replaced by two large multifunction displays flanking a modern heads-up display. Hands-on throttle and stick controls were designed to let pilots manage weapons, radar, and navigation without taking their hands off the primary flight controls, a feature borrowed from the most advanced American fighters. Speed of reaction was built into every system. A ring laser gyroscope navigation system promised alignment in just 22 seconds, compared to several minutes for conventional systems. From engine start to takeoff, the entire sequence was designed to take less than half a minute, faster than any existing fighter and crucial for rapid response missions. The weapons package was designed for versatility. Twin 20mm cannons provided close-range firepower, while 7 external hardpoints could carry the entire range of American weapons: AIM-9 Sidewinder and AIM-7 Sparrow air-to-air missiles, AGM-65 Maverick air-to-ground missiles, and the complete Mark 80 series of bombs. The aircraft was even designed to accommodate future weapons like the AIM-120 AMRAAM. By mid-1982, the first F-5G prototype was ready. 3 years of engineering work had produced what looked set to be an excellent fighter. Modern, capable, and affordable. The question was, how would it perform in the air? Testing begins. On August 30th, 1982, test pilot Russ Scott strapped himself into the cockpit of the prototype and took to the skies. The maiden flight exceeded every expectation. In just 40 minutes, Scott took the aircraft to 40,000 feet and pushed it past Mach 1. The prototype handled beautifully, responding to controls with the precision and agility that Northrop had designed into the airframe. When Scott landed, the initial reports were glowing. The F-5G flew exactly as predicted. Subsequent test flights validated this design's ambitious goals. The aircraft could indeed climb to 40,000 feet in just over 2 minutes, including engine start and navigation system alignment. The thrust-to-weight ratio of 1.13 made it one of the most agile fighters in the world, capable of unlimited angle of attack maneuvers that contemporary fighters like the F-16 simply couldn't match. Among the most impressive features was the aircraft's scramble time. From a cold start, it could be airborne in under a minute, a performance that impressed military observers worldwide. The ring laser gyroscope navigation system aligned in exactly the promised 22 seconds, while the advanced radar tracked targets at the anticipated 50-mile range. By April 1983, the first prototype had accumulated 240 flights without a single major malfunction. 10 potential customer nations sent evaluation teams to witness the F-20's capabilities, and the response was universally positive. Chuck Yeager, now working as a Northrop spokesperson, became one of the F-20's most vocal advocates. The legendary test pilot, notoriously camera-shy and known for his crusty demeanor with reporters, appeared in sleek commercials that had the feel of automobile advertisements. As Yeager stood beside the gleaming Tigershark, the narrator intoned, quote, "You're on strip alert. A low-flying, high-speed intruder is detected 80 miles from your base. In the Tigershark, you can respond faster than any other fighter in the world today." Yeager's glowing endorsement gave the aircraft enormous credibility. Yeager was not alone in his praise for the Tigershark. Test pilot Paul Metz, who flew extensively in the F-20 program, would later describe it as, quote, "a fighter pilot's airplane. Easy to fly, easy to operate, reliable, with intuitive flying qualities." He added, quote, "The Tigershark was as reliable as Northrop claimed. It exceeded all frontline fighters by a wide, and some termed incredible margin." The cockpit was spacious, the controls responsive, and takeoffs and landings were straightforward, even for relatively inexperienced pilots. The second prototype, featuring the complete avionics suite, made its first flight on August 26, 1983. This aircraft validated the F-20's sophisticated electronics and weapon systems, successfully firing AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles and later AIM-7 Sparrows. By late 1983, the F-20 had proven itself as a technical masterpiece. Northrop was involved in serious negotiations with multiple potential customers, notably Bahrain, South Korea, and Morocco. Nothing could go wrong. Politics intervenes. Despite the F-20's prowess in the air, what Northrop hadn't anticipated was a radical shifting of the political goalposts, one that would throw the project into jeopardy. In January 1981, Ronald Reagan had succeeded Jimmy Carter as president. While the FX program was initially left to continue as planned, it soon became clear that Reagan's approach to foreign policy would be very different to that of his predecessor, and many of Carter's restrictions on international military technology sales were now gradually being relaxed. Toward the end of his first year in office, President Reagan had signed a major military aid package for Pakistan that included 40 F-16As. The decision had been driven by Cold War strategy. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan had convinced Reagan that Pakistan needed the very best American equipment to serve as a bulwark against communist expansion. But other U.S. allies saw this as a crack in the FX policy and began demanding the very best for themselves. In May 1982, Venezuela agreed to buy 18 F-16As. Turkey announced plans to purchase 132 F-16Cs in September 1983, while Greece, not to be outdone by their traditional rival, would order 34 F-16Cs the following year. Suddenly, the F-20 wasn't going up against the inferior F-16-79. It was competing against the real thing, and that changed everything. Countries that had been potential Tigershark customers were now buying F-16s instead. Even though the F-20 outperformed the F-16 in several areas, the F-16 was not just better known, but had vast economies of scale, U.S. Air Force adoption, and a political lobby behind it. The carefully constructed FX market was evaporating before Northrop's eyes. Making matters worse, the U.S. government made a financial commitment to help Israel develop its own new fighter, the IAI Lavi. Northrop objected bitterly. While they had to privately fund the F-20's development, the government was directly subsidizing a foreign competitor that would compete in the same export market. Meanwhile, Taiwan, the original catalyst for the entire F-20 program, had given up hope of ever receiving American fighters. The 1982 US PRC Joint Communiqué had formalized what Taipei already knew. They would never get the F-20 they had desperately wanted. Faced with this reality, Taiwan launched their own indigenous fighter program, the AID-C FCK-1 Qingguo. The F-20 found itself trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare. While other companies could market directly to foreign air forces, the Tigershark could only be sold through the State Department as part of the FX program. Every piece of marketing material had to go through months of government review. The State Department, which had never been enthusiastic about the FX concept, showed little interest in actively promoting the aircraft. By the dawn of 1984, the original rationale for the FX program had been completely undermined, and the once bright future of the F-20 was now looking increasingly bleak. From bad to worse. Despite the deteriorating political situation, Northrop pressed forward with their sales campaign. The company had invested over $750 million of its own money in the Tigershark. They couldn't afford to quit now. But 1984 would bring a series of disasters that would shatter any remaining hope for the aircraft. In March, Congress opened hearings into the FX program. The testimony was damning. William Schneider, Jr., Undersecretary of State for Security Assistance, admitted that FX policy might not result in any sales despite government support. Thomas V. Jones, Northrop's CEO, argued bitterly that there was little point in developing aircraft if companies had to rely on an indifferent government to sell them. Most devastating was the testimony of Brigadier General Thomas Baker, who revealed that the Air Force wasn't actively marketing FX at all. Over 4 years, he noted, the U.S. had sold 100 fighters to 29 countries, none of them FX aircraft. The committee's conclusion was scathing. State Department and DoD were guilty of rhetoric without support on FX. But the real catastrophe came on October 10, 1984. During a sales demonstration flight in South Korea, the first F-20 prototype crashed, claiming the life of Northrop test pilot Darrell Cornell. The investigation revealed a chilling cause. Cornell had blacked out due to excessive G-forces during a high-performance maneuver. The F-20's incredible agility had become a risk. The crash was a public relations nightmare. Foreign military officials who'd been impressed by the F-20's performance started to wonder if this aircraft was too dangerous to fly. With the export market collapsing and international sales prospects evaporating, Northrop faced a harsh reality. The F-20's only hope for survival lay in convincing the U.S. military to buy it. In November 1984, Congress directed the Air Force and Navy to study using a single aircraft type to fulfill the aggressor role, a specially configured aircraft used to simulate enemy fighters in training exercises for both services. The F-20 seemed perfect for this mission. It was fast, agile, and could realistically simulate Soviet fighter tactics. But in January 1985, the Navy confirmed its selection of a modified version of the F-16 instead. Industry rumors suggested the F-16 had been sold at a loss specifically to keep Northrop's F-20 out of the market, a move that highlighted just how politically isolated the Tigershark had become. 4 months later, tragedy struck again. On May 14, 1985, the second prototype crashed at Goose Bay, Labrador. During a practice run of an aerobatic routine for the Paris Air Show, test pilot Dave Barnes also succumbed to G-force-induced loss of consciousness. He did not survive the crash. The F-20's superior performance characteristics, the very features that made it exceptional, were proving lethal to the men who flew it, and the chances of finally confirming a sale were now diminishing more rapidly than ever. The Tigershark now had just one lifeline left. Last chance. The final hope for the F-20 lay with the Air National Guard. The ANG needed to replace its aging fleet of fighters, and Northrop argued that the F-20 was ideal for this mission. Its rapid scramble time made it perfect for homeland defense, while its lower operating costs would allow the Guard to maintain larger numbers of aircraft. Unlike the regular Air Force F-16s, the F-20 could fire the AIM-7 Sparrow missile, giving Guard units beyond visual range capability. The Air Force, however, had different priorities. If the ANG flew F-16s, it would further reduce unit costs through larger production runs, maintain commonality between Guard and regular Air Force units, and better prepare ANG pilots for potential frontline service. The Congressional Budget Office also disputed Northrop's cost claims, arguing that the F-20's projected savings were overstated. Several nations had indicated they would consider buying the F-20 if the U.S. military adopted it first, a crucial endorsement that would validate the aircraft's capabilities. The Air National Guard competition represented the program's last realistic chance for survival. On October 31, 1986, the Air Force announced its decision. The F-16C had been selected for the Air National Guard, upgraded to support the AIM-7 Sparrow missile. The F-20's final opportunity had vanished. Within weeks, Northrop made the inevitable announcement. After 6 years of development and over $1.2 billion in investment, the F-20 Tigershark program was cancelled. The greatest fighter that never was would remain forever grounded. Aviation's greatest what if. In the wake of the decision, Northrop was reluctant to protest too vigorously. They feared that challenging the F-16 selection might jeopardize their far more valuable B-2 stealth bomber contract, upon which the company's entire future as a major defense contractor depended. The B-2 program was worth over $40 billion compared to the F-20's $1.2 billion investment, making the business calculation brutally simple. With the F-20's fate sealed, Northrop quietly closed the chapter on what many considered their finest achievement. After the fatal crashes involving the first 2 Tigershark prototypes, only the third remained. It now sits in the California Science Center in Los Angeles, a monument to engineering excellence that arrived at the wrong time. Aviation enthusiasts still debate whether the F-20 could have changed the course of fighter development, and whether it would have dominated export markets if given the chance. Instead of being forced into expensive F-16 programs they couldn't fully afford, small air forces around the world might have gained genuine beyond visual range capability decades earlier, fundamentally altering regional power balances. The F-20's lower operating costs could have allowed countries to maintain larger fighter fleets, while its rapid scramble time might have made it the perfect homeland defense interceptor for an entire generation. Fortunately, the F-20's legacy has lived on in other fighters. Its radar proved more successful than the aircraft itself, eventually finding its way into Taiwan's Ching-Kuo fighter and South Korea's T-50 trainer. Meanwhile, the advanced avionics architecture and fly-by-wire systems pioneered for the Tigershark influenced a generation of fighter designs, while its single-engined, high-thrust concept would later be echoed in aircraft like the F-16XL and modern fourth-generation fighters. Even the rapid scramble time and integrated cockpit displays that made the F-20 revolutionary became standard features in fighters that followed. Nonetheless, the Tigershark itself remains aviation's greatest what if. Aviation writer Steve Pace would later write that the F-20 was, quote, one of the best fighters that never went into production. It was a machine that exceeded every performance goal, impressed every pilot who flew it, and failed not because of any technical shortcoming, but because politics had moved faster than engineering. The Tigershark's tragedy was not that it couldn't fly, but that it flew too well for a world that no longer needed it.